And to open the session, I'd like you to welcome both Barbara and Stephen to the podium to take over and open our session for us. Barbara and Stephen.
Good morning. Ohayo gozaimasu.
Good morning.
I have. First, of course, we'd love to thank our organizers, the Saionji family, the Goi Peace Foundation, the entire excellent hospitality team for this exciting invitation, and for entrusting us with the opportunity to address the opening session. We'll do our best to set the right tone for this critically important conversation today about the harmonious expression of the divine feminine and divine masculine in our troubled world. Let's take a deep breath, get centered. The starting point for our conversation is first and foremost to acknowledge the fundamental importance of the sacred in all that we are and all that we do. Regardless of our religious or cultural identity, our lives are nothing less than the expression of spirit as we aspire each day to become more and more a vehicle for what we are calling here the divine spark.
This theme calls to mind Pierre de Chardin's quote that we are not human beings capable of having a spiritual experience. We are, in fact, spirit beings having a human experience. As the interpretation of our lovely yin-yang symbol teaches, and here we get to go first and state the obvious and it will sound new, of course, the underlying reality of the human experience is non-dual. That's very important. The term samsara is often used to express the illusionary nature of our perceptions and our tendency to see things black and white. And of course, in the yin-yang symbol, it's important that each of the extremes actually contains the seed of the other. It reminded me, since we're here in Japan at the moment, of these lovely pictures you see of the waves at the coast at Matsushima. And there's a whole, a school of these paintings that show a turbulent moonlit ocean, often with the caption that is a Zen koan haiku that reads, "I am moving all day and not moving at all. I'm like the moon underneath the waves that ever go rolling."
And yet, all around us in nature and the cosmos, opposites appear to manifest as night and day, sound and silence, birth and death, masculine and feminine, and so forth. But think about the value we derive from the positive individual characteristics of these polarities. Without their unique and singular expression, the cycle of life could not continue. But we must learn to see them as cycles that ebb and flow in delicate balance, not as polar opposites that impose limitation or stand in conflict with one another.
Linking this to this insight to the work we do in society and to peace work in general is the term Ubuntu, coming from the Bantu language, which Desmond Tutu describes thusly: "My humanity is caught up, is inextricably bound up with yours. We live together in a bundle of life. We say a person is a person through other persons. I am what I am because of who we all are. And if one of us goes down, ultimately we all go down."
But arriving at such a non-dual balance between masculine and feminine qualities is the basis for transforming spiritual experience and practice into action that benefits others. It is key to activating divine spark through us and as us in the world.
We'd like to continue by presenting some applications from our own traditions and our own personal projects that illustrate putting faith into practice. And I come from a Quaker tradition, and we actually publish books called Faith and Practice Manuals. So for some people, they are inseparable. And I think that's the first thing I know that I'm singing the same verse that Yuka was just singing and that her mother sang before. So using this balance of qualities we just introduced and will return to, we wanted to introduce this since it is the topic of focus of today's conversation.
As you know, I'm the executive director of the Association for Global New Thought, an organization that represents many unity and religious science churches, mostly in the United States, but other countries as well. Our mission centers on engaged spirituality, or as we have been calling it for many years, spiritually motivated social activism. One of our charter programs is called the Gandhi King Season for Nonviolence, which honors the memorial anniversaries of those legendary peacemakers. We just celebrated the 20th year this year. The success of Season for Nonviolence relies on the balance it holds between the so-called masculine and feminine competencies. For example, instead of a hierarchy or central authority, the leadership is distributed among hundreds of communities, sharing resources interactively, which we call the omni-local model. The model is completely inclusive, inviting all gifts and creative expressions, and thrives on engagement of the whole person, mind, body, heart, and spirit. It measures success not by specific outcomes, but by the deepening of understanding through relationships. Some might think of these as qualities of the divine feminine, but without the discipline, accountability, strategic linear planning, and the assertiveness to confront inequity and injustice, so-called masculine qualities, there would be no forward motion. But even more than this, an almost perfect balance between the divine feminine and masculine in leadership can be found in the principles themselves upon which Gandhi, and after him Dr. King, based their work in Satyagraha toward nonviolent social change. For example, in both their philosophies,
nonviolence means to honor the inherent worth of every human being, naturally seeking to understand each other to build friendship and community.
Nonviolence means believing that our lives are linked together, as in the principle of Ubuntu, and that we can trust one another in working toward the common good.
Nonviolence means dedicating ourselves to the fundamental rights of each and every human being.
Nonviolence is courageously choosing to practice compassion with our adversaries, opposing injustice, not people.
Nonviolence means recognizing love as the power of the human spirit to triumph over injustice, inequity, and suffering. In my own work in the Quaker Alternatives to Violence project in prisons and communities, we follow a simple formula of balancing masculine and feminine principles, including listening, self-knowledge, community building, conflict resolution, and peacemaking. At one prison where I work, the inmates refer to it as that empathy class. Among the core activities is role-playing, whereby the participants swap roles in order to see a familiar situation from another person's point of view. This program has been in existence for over 40 years, and there are a number of formal studies that have measured its impact on incarcerated individuals' ability to become peacemakers, even in the challenging environment of a prison community. Male participants have often learned a distorted definition of what it is to be a man, and the experience and practice of a balanced feminine perspective is one of the core contributions of this program to their lives.
To conclude, we'd like to be a bit more specific about what human capacities are required for a more balanced life and to create a more evolutionary model for leadership.
Returning to the Quakers, we tend to condense things to be very succinct. And our core principles we call the testimonies, and they are simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality, and stewardship, which gives you the acronym SPICES, so you can remember it. The interesting thing is also that these are handed down and studied as a series of what we call advices and queries. In other words, very short statements followed by a series of questions for reflection. For example, the advices and queries on peace, one can read the statement from William Penn from the year 1693, where he says, "A good end cannot sanctify evil means, nor must we ever do evil that good may come of it." Period. This is followed by the queries on peace for individuals.
Do I live in the virtue of that life and power that takes away the occasion of all wars?
Do I nourish peace within myself as I work for peace in the world?
Do I confront violence wherever it occurs, even when my personal relationships are involved?
Where there is distrust, injustice, or hatred, how am I an instrument of reconciliation and love? There is also a series of queries on peace for communities as a community to think together. I think of this way of teaching as being akin to the distinction between a book that leads all readers to the same answers and one that leads each individual reader to a different set of profound questions.
Although we cannot propose a list that is perfect or complete, we can describe some of the transformative qualities that reflect our evolution towards synthesizing the divine feminine and divine masculine spark. For example, we are evolving our focus from domination to relationship, from separation to connectedness, from exclusionary hierarchical leadership to inclusive shared leadership. We are evolving our behavior from competition to cooperation, from expectation to observation, from scarcity to abundance, from individual gain to collective benefit. We are evolving our emotional response patterns to emphasize forgiveness over hate, reconciliation over revenge, hope over fear, peace over violence. Taken together, the balancing of these qualities moves us toward a humanity that is characterized by interdependence, trustworthiness, transparency, sustainability, unconditional love, and a true spiritual maturity which can only be gained by the harmonious integration of the highest expression of divine feminine and divine masculine principles.
So now we are going to state the questions that the panelists have been invited to respond to. These are printed in the program books, and are they going to be projected?
No.
Excuse me. They are printed in the program books. And we ask you, in light of the time considerations, to each respond to a specific question that attracts your interest.
So we'll go ahead and read, but follow along in your book. Which qualities, typically characterized as feminine, and which typically characterized as masculine, will be most useful for those seeking to ignite the divine spark?
How can we notice when the masculine and the feminine are in balance?
How did you find this balance in yourself?
How can we join love and power?
How can the masculine and feminine principles be best balanced in relationship, leadership,
And relationship.
and relationship?
How might the power of the divine feminine and the strength of the divine masculine harmonize to create a higher order of human expression.
Thank you, and we'd like to ask our friend Linda Francis to begin.